The Brandon Peters Show may contain explicit language and detailed plot points. For more information on the show, stay tuned to the end of the episode.
It's the summer of 93 at 30.
Well, it is Friday. Time to close out summer of 93 at 30 week with a music video. Today it is Troy Day. As the Saturday Evening Post, Troy Brownfield debuts here finally. Welcome, Troy.
Hey, how's it going?
Returning champion.
Champion.
All right. So, as I've been doing with everybody else who comes on here, before we get into your first music video, we'll talk your memories of 93. Summer, preferably, but 93 in general.
Easy. No, I actually remember it quite well. Summer 1993, I was in college at Indiana State University.
Mm-hmm.
I had started dating my wife that January. So, I was really actively involved in the music scene at campus. I did a lot of booking and so forth, of putting shows on and everything. But it's hard to say in certain levels of this, because we've talked about this a lot. But music culturally was everywhere in a very different way. Like,
Mm-hmm.
There's music everywhere now, but it seemed like something impactful and something, kind of earth-shaking was coming out all the time in the 90s.
Yeah.
And there were this was the period of big upheaval in music, which I know we've talked about before, after the SoundScan changed in 1991, the way that they tabulate music sales.
Mm-hmm.
It was previously that record store owners would report not what the actual sales numbers were, but what they thought was selling.
Right. That's so bizarre.
To the record labels, and they would send stuff. And so they switched to a point of purchase program called SoundScan. Literally what they do were they'd scan it, but it wasn't just scanning it to make the sale. It would report the data. It would store and report. And all of a sudden, the record companies found out that what they thought was selling wasn't actually what was selling. Hip hop was selling in much larger numbers than they thought. Country was selling in much larger numbers than they thought. And this system was widely introduced just in time for the alternative explosion, the Seattle bands to really rip it up. And it was the tail end, like the hair metal would end, but Metallica and Guns N' Roses would survive quite well, thank you. But
right.
The crazy ass nature of what you see in the charts that happens for the album charts in 92 and 93 as a result of that, where you have Guns N' Roses debuting at number one, and they're knocked out by Michael Jackson, who's knocked out by Garth Brooks, who's knocked out by Nirvana, and like all these things. And it wasn't exactly in that order, but that's who was topping the charts. Whitney Houston would be replaced by Soundgarden. It was a huge upheaval because people didn't know. They didn't expect it. There wasn't data. Now all of a sudden there's data at a time when all these bands are exploding. And NWA kind of missed the window when NWA came out, because you had the 88, 89, 90 releases, but then like Cube solo album, and then Dre's The Chronic benefited from SoundScan because they got their actual numbers out. And The Chronic blew up in a way that some other albums had not. And so I remember that period of literally like every week something crazy was coming out. And then kind of the flash one that everybody talks about is September of 1991. Like this 6-week period, the 4.5 weeks of September, and then the 2 weeks on either side, where you literally had Metallica's Black Album, Guns N' Roses usually.
Right. Oh yeah, there's a meme now for that.
Nevermind. Yeah. Red Hot Chili Peppers, Blood Sugar Sex Magic, Soundgarden's Bad Motor Figure. These fucking things came out week after week, and some of them on the same day. September 24th, 91, with Chili Peppers, Soundgarden, Nirvana, all came out that day. And it's craziness.
Right.
But it presents a huge upheaval that ran for a couple of years. So we get to the summer of 93, we're in the wake of all of this has changed dramatically. And the landscape of what people are listening to has changed dramatically. And you can't also discount, I mean, obviously we're talking about music videos. Kids don't get, and it's not because they're kids, then they're dumb. Kids didn't live through it. They don't get how much of a presence MTV was.
Right.
Because MTV is now 12 hours of ridiculousness reruns a day.
That's all it is. Yeah.
And back then, there was actual music. There was no other system. You could have the radio and you had MTV. And that's what you had. And these music videos that you're talking about within your programs right now, they were all massive chart hits.
Right.
So not only were the videos very popular, the songs themselves were incredibly popular and selling millions of copies because people still bought music.
Yeah.
and paid for it in single form. So I mean it's crazy. It's a very crazy time that is hard to explain if you didn't live through it, because the notion of you didn't have any of these systems. You had to go to a place and pay for it, and they gave it to you.
Well, and now it's a system that's really weird, basing off of like streaming listens, or it's weird.
Yeah, there's a breakdown that's been going around lately that tells you like how many streams per it takes to get to $1 or something. And
right,
Tidal pays the best, but it still takes like 947 streams to get a dime or something. I mean, it's crazy numbers. Like they're, terrible percentages.
And the physical sales are like a joke compared to what they used to be.
Oh yeah, physical sales are terrible outside of a handful of people. Taylor Swift is basically keeping physical sales afloat by herself.
And mostly they're vinyl sales nowadays too. That's hitting the heavier percent because it's more of a collector thing, and plus it's the better physical of the thing, the better sounding one.
Yeah, vinyl was practically non-existent by 1993. At that point, you'd had the arc of the compact disc is introduced in 1984 in a widescreen. I think it was shown in 82, and then by 84, it's out in wide numbers. And then you've got the vinyl, the CD, and the cassette. And pretty much within a couple of years, vinyl is almost entirely phased out.
Yep.
And partially because of it, you could rack far less copies of albums than you could of CDs and cassettes. And so the record stores went all in on the new, and like vinyl got increasingly smaller, and in mall stores and chain record stores, and cassettes and CDs got bigger. But the economy of it shifted because as people bought fewer 45s, then people were more likely to buy a whole album.
Right.
And so you had these, and not only that, but people would buy albums when they debuted in huge numbers, just like movie openings used to be. So first week sales were a huge thing, and you had albums going platinum in a first week, selling millions of copies in week one. And that hadn't happened to that extent, or at least it wasn't trackable.
Right. Yeah, I get
you. Until the 90s. And so it's a very different system. And famously, you can find it on YouTube. There is a video of Left Eye from TLC explaining how you can sell millions of dollars and millions of albums and still go bankrupt. But she breaks down what the economy of it was at the time, where she talks about exactly what the division is of how many cents each person got a record. The royalties like 5%. So and Oasis, when they came out, they knew that this was bad shit, so they argued to get like 6%. Because they tried to get like that 1 more percent. But really, if you had a $10 album, then the artists were making 50 cents off of So you could sell $1 million and you'd be like a thousandaire, but you got to split it with management and everything,
Yeah.
So it's like a really crazy system. So, and I feel like it's important to talk about it, give it all that context, because in 1993, from a geological time standpoint, million selling rap albums were still kind of a novelty to the music business.
Right.
If you
Yeah.
weren't Hammer and Vanilla Ice in 90 and 91, there was like this many people who were selling millions of records in the genre.
Right. Yeah. It was all. Yeah. That was it. It was going to be a fad. That was the talk.
Yeah, guitar music's on its way out.
Yeah. What music had like? I mean, what has been like a fad and just died out? Like, I can't. Because I mean, ska has had popular phases, but it's still around.
Yeah, I don't think anything goes away entirely. And even if you could point to like disco culture, disco aesthetic dying off, disco as a sound is very present in lots of different music.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Groove is in the Heart by D-Light was a disco song in every way. There's different songs there's
Mm-hmm.
songs by The Weeknd or whatever that are very much disco songs.
Yeah.
But that I don't know, but I think that there's a lot of stuff baked into that whole hip hop's a fad, and I think it was really like a lot of white people saying that.
Oh yeah, it's probably what it was. Yeah,
not paying attention to the fact that it had been
well,
around.
the Beastie
for a long
Boys
time.
might stay around, but the rest of it's probably gone.
Yeah. We should, the Beasties need to go on that list of people who are selling millions of hip hop albums in the period, and it was slowly cranking up, and it was, Dre is part of a side effect of groups that got famous and then produced famous individual members, which rock had been doing for a long time. But
Jackson 5, I would say.
Yeah.
We've got some. Jermaine, people
Motown
joke
did
about.
it.
Yeah.
But hell, I mean, even country. I mean, like Fifth Edition produced Kenny Rogers.
Okay. Gotcha.
First edition. Yeah.
He was a star of Summer of '82 at 40 with Six Pack, or is it Six Pack or?
Yeah,
Six Pack. Yeah. So Troy, but before we get into the music video, the movies we watched this week, just quick hits on those. You may have heard of Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, Much Ado About Nothing, Son-in-Law, and The Firm. So you got quick thoughts about any of those?
Snow White and Seven Dwarfs, never heard of it.
It's a cartoon.
I saw Snow White on the I don't know. Was there a prior? What were the re-releases on that? Because I know I saw it in the theater.
Snow White. There's I think it just every couple of years in the 80s and then hitting here in the 90s. Like there was a popular re-release.
Yeah, I know I saw it in the theater, but obviously it's a stone cold classic. You can't say too much bad about Snow White. Much Ado About Nothing. I thought was great. Shakespeare adaptation, really, really great cast.
Yep.
I mean, Brandon and Thompson were married at the time. They're just on fire chemistry wise. Lots of other great people in it. Michael Keaton's hilarious. You got Denzel and Keanu, which makes you realize how goddamn immortal everybody in this cast is.
That's
they
true.
Still all look great. Like
That's
Becca Tales in it.
Yeah.
I think if you're in that movie, you stopped aging.
That's probably where they found the vampire juice in that one.
Yeah, it's a terrific Shakespeare adaptation.
Or it's historically accurate because they were all there because they're vampires.
That's right. You said The Firm, and what was the
Son-in-Law?
Oh yeah, Son-in-Law. I think I told you at a different point that I know I've seen Son-in-Law, but I have so little memory of it. Carla Gugino, I remember that.
Yep.
Which, obvious reasons. But then now The Firm, I had read the book, and so I was excited that they're making the firm. You know, when I saw a actual interview with Tom Cruise way before the movie came out where he said he was making the firm, I'm like, oh, holy shit, that's interesting. You know, and then it's you know, it has a different spin on the ending, but it's a very effective. And you know, Holly Hunter is just tremendous in that. That's the performance that sticks with me. Ed Harris is
she
good.
was nominated for it. She was nominated for it twice, that and the piano, and she'd win for the piano, and then her co-star would beat her performance in the firm.
Yeah, Jean Triplehorn was. Jean Triplehorn was kind of having a moment because she was in Basic Instinct the year before, and then she was in the firm, and she was. I don't know. I think she was primed for more stuff. I'm not sure what.
Yeah.
The swerve on that was because she was married to Ben Stiller for a while.
Oh, that's right. I forgot about that.
Yeah, so it was, but yeah, so she's never stopped acting. You know, Big Love, and Criminal Minds, and all kinds of stuff. But it was just like she had like these two really big movies in a row. And I'm not sure.
She had big leading lady potential. Yeah. It didn't happen for everybody. I guess maybe some choices didn't stick or something like that.
Yeah, but I think that's a pretty solid movie. But it did give us. I mean, and it made Grisham. I mean, Grisham was already a bestseller, but holy crap, that every one of his books got made into a movie.
Yeah, I think what the 90s authors would be what, like Crichton, Clancy, and Grisham probably got a lot for pop culture, big release movies.
Yeah, I think that's extremely fair because Hunt for Red October is 90, right? And then
89 or 90, yeah. And then
Clancy's just, you know, and Crichton. And, you know, Crichton, to be fair, he had been going since the 70s. He was always knocking them out, even if people didn't realize that. Like, I don't think a lot of people, if you ask people in the 70s if they weren't big readers, if they knew that Andromeda Strain and Coma and Westworld were all the same dude, I don't think they'd be surprised. But I doubt that they knew in the way that, you know, after Jurassic Park and everything, that Crichton was a brand.
Yeah.
In a very different, because in a way, King had provided the model for that in the 80s. With, you know, you had authors that were adapted before that, obviously, you know, but the whole way that they marketed King, you know, the newest film from the master of horror, you know, and that whole they're like, oh shit, we can do that with legal guy, we can do that with techno thriller guy, we can do that with,
that's true.
You know, they figured out how to make it across.
Yeah. Before him was what, Roald Dahl? That was the guy that they
maybe
would tap. Thanks. Yeah. Oh man.
The new tale of awful families from the master of awful families.
Okay, cool. So the real title of the song we're talking about today, music video, is Fuck with Dre and Everybody's Celebrating, which is the second single from The Chronic, peaking at number 8 on the Hot 100. It was certified gold, selling over 800,000 records. So song-wise, this is a diss song. Troy with dissing on Eazy-E, Luke Campbell of Two Live Crew, New York rapper Tim Dog. I'm not familiar with him. I am familiar with Nate Dogg, but not Tim Dog, and Ice Cube. So what do you think about this one, Troy? The song wise?
Well, I love that, you know, we get to talk about a diss track.
Yeah, it's great. Is this one of the earliest like sold as a single diss tracks?
I think so, because the thing that, you know, they were originally just like handed around, like, you know, the early versions of mixtapes were just cassettes that were handed around to people. But it's like, hey, listen, you know, to what so and so said. But and some of that stuff was on record. I mean, there's things that, you know, like LL Cool J tracks and other things where it's, you know, there are at least references or shots or whatever. But this is a start to finish, mainly about Eazy-E and other people who are in collateral damage. But the video is expressly about Eazy-E.
Yeah, they have the it's directed by Dr. Dre and has a stand-in for him called Sleazy-E.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's interesting because, you know, it's not just weaponizing the musical medium, it's weaponizing the video medium in a way that hasn't been.
Right. No, this is like I'm not just putting this on my record. I'm putting it in your car and I'm putting it in on your TV. Word is
Yeah.
out. Like,
And yeah, and the fragmentation that happened in NWA. I mean, if anybody's seen the movie, if anybody's seen Straight Outta Compton, or they know the story, they know what happened first. That
mhm.
Cube left first. That he was really pissed with Jerry, the manager, and all the different things that had gone
Yeah.
on in the band. And he goes and he records America's with the KKK, America's Most Wanted. And No Vaseline is one of the classic, just absolutely brutal diss tracks of all time. And this a lot of stuff that would happen on the Chronic was in response to these the group fragmenting and the enmity that was happening because Eazy-E stayed aligned with management and the other guys are like bullshit. They
Right.
blew apart. And I mean it's all well documented. So but so Dre is obviously taking aim at Eazy-E more than anybody else. But it's also interesting that he not only weaponizes that, but he weaponizes his protege, Snoop Dogg.
Snoop Dogg. Yeah, and Snoop's in this video, Snoop is going hard. Like, I wouldn't mess with him in this video. Like, he's got this look on his face and this attitude that, man.
Yeah,
Nasty.
it's not the Martha Stewart Pal Corona commercial.
Corona commercial, yeah. No, he is. Somebody pissed him off. But yeah, they're in a parking garage just singing the track. Dre, I just flashes his Funkadelic shirt up in there.
Yeah,
so it's got a green color on it.
yeah. I was just gonna. There are Funkadelic samples all over the Chronic, and there's a small one in this particular song. There's a couple of different songs that are sampled in this tune, but there's. I think that was part of. As it goes along, you see that Dre becomes one of the guys that is vocal about clearing samples.
Yeah,
and about getting. If nothing else, saying, if you like this, you should listen to George Clinton.
Yeah. Which the Verve that would get hit hardest by sampling, or a rock band would get hit hard during, or is that the early 2000s? Bittersweet Symphony.
No, that was the 90s. That
okay.
But
their biggest hit song, they could not make a dime off of.
Yeah, well, and in recent years, the Stones actually gave them
right when they're not
back.
making when there's no money left in it. Hey, you know what, you guys, here you go.
You can have that. Well, I think that what's his name, Richard John Blank, lead singer of the Verve, the guy that wrote the song Ashworth. He said that Mick and Keith gave them the money back.
Oh,
like it was probably sitting in their Uncle Scrooge vault of gold coins and music royalties that Mick probably got a check. He's like, oh, what's that? Oh, the Verve, let's give it back.
No wrong. All right, we're fine, we'll give it back to the Verve.
I don't care, man. I don't know.
Give the Verve. All right.
Yeah.
I don't know. Whatever. Sorry. I hope viewers are enjoying our Rolling Stones.
That was totally unplanned.
Keith Richards and Mick Jagger in the summer of '93. What were they? They were getting ready for Bridges to Babylon, weren't they? Around this time, yeah. So
I've been right.
It's about that time.
They never go away. But no, it's interesting.
Sometimes they're cool. Sometimes they're like old cringy, and then they get cool again. They come back around, those Stones.
That's right. Now, in terms of Snoop, he gets to drop, which is a sample and a reference to George Clinton and the Atomic Dog.
Oh yeah.
Reference here.
This is one of the first bow wow wow yippee yo yippee yay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
which he'll go back to in like "What's My Name" and other songs. But
I mean, they're just an Easy-E so hard. Like he's got Looney Tune sounds that go with him, like skedaddles and ponk ponk type things like that. Um, this one does have like some gay sex jokes in there too, or like the lyric is Luke's bending over, so Luke's getting stuck, and like they show him like I'm like bending over for a producer or whatever. So
yeah, there's like a zoom in to like conceal what's happening, but
right,
that closing iris. But yeah, and that's, as the kids say, that hasn't aged well. But that's something that's really prevalent in a lot
Mhm.
of hip hop, of not just of that time, but well into the 2000s. I mean,
Oh yeah, I mean
there's a
like
lot of it in Eminem's catalog.
Beastie Boys have it a lot too. Um, and it's just, and I try to tell people, which you know what's funny, like our parents with like, back when drinking and driving, they'd be like, well, things were different back in the 70s. So here I am with things were different back in the 90s. Like there was vernacular that I agree was never right to say, but like if you were like a white guy like me growing up in the Midwest, it was the link. I mean, it was just right. And even in pop culture and movies and stuff, that like um, saying the three-letter word that begins with an F with people, that was just common. Like it's crazy. Like we weren't all out with pitchforks. Most of us just said it because it was the thing. Those three-letter homophobic slurs. We weren't saying them as a hate crime on that. We were replacing other words, just using those, and didn't
Well,
know any better.
it's crazy, if you how frequently that word crops up in 80s stuff. I mean, the Monster Squad actually has
They got it
several
too.
instances of it.
That's the one area the Goonies may have over the Monster Squad. I'll say that. Language.
Yeah,
Fair enough.
because the Goonies is definitely not better than the Monster Squad.
No,
So,
it is not.
now that we've covered that,
Oh, don't
but
worry. There's dozens of us that believe that. Dozens.
but no, it's an unfortunate side effect of a
Mhm.
lot of that, and there's a lot of songs and a lot of movies that have those references at the time.
Mhm.
And fortunately, a lot of that's been weeded out. But hell, if you recorded it, it's there.
Yeah.
You gotta live with people rediscovering that every once in a while.
Right.
But
I'll say Dre's got one of the like I don't know, this sounding hard, cool lines in history here when he goes, I'm gonna rob you in Compton and blast you in Miami. I'm like, damn. So that sounds pretty
coast to
cool and
coast.
hard, yeah. Coast to coast, like crazy.
Well, and there's just it's one of those things where it really did help propel the album,
Hmm.
and at the same time it pushed down Eazy-E in the estimation of a lot of people,
Hmm.
because his stuff, he sold a lot of records as a solo artist, but his stuff is not as well regarded
No. And
as
I'll be
Dre's.
honest with you, I don't think I first was hearing of Easy. I think one of my first instances of knowing of him was this video, and when he was dying, and because I had Channel One News back when I was in high school, middle school, that we'd watch with Anderson Cooper and Lisa Ling, uh, and they reported on Easy E's death, getting AIDS and stuff. So. And I was
Yeah.
like, oh, who's Easy in NWA with Dre and stuff? I'm like, who is this lost member? And because of Easy E, we discovered the Bone Thugs and Harmony. That was like his guys.
Uh-huh.
And yeah, so I didn't know much of Easy E's career at all.
Yeah, I think that my understanding of what he was doing, like the song Boys in the Hood and stuff. Things I read about in like Spin and Rolling Stone, because I used to read the music magazines really regularly at this point. And so even if I wasn't necessarily a fan of something, I still read a lot about it.
Right.
And,
Yeah.
Contextualized a lot of those things. And so, I appreciated the Chronic more later, because in this particular period, I was way more into the alt rock stuff that was very prevalent,
Yeah.
and this like records coming out weekly, like
Yeah.
crazy amounts of new stuff was
I think
was dropping.
is it this time or something like that? The alt rock. That's where I latched on to too. There was like it first started before it got its own station when I was up in Fort Wayne. Um, I think it was called B106. It was a pop station or something, and you had to wait till like after 10 o'clock at night, and then they'd play alternative music all through there. And I discovered like everything back then, like
Well,
Nine Inch Nails, REM, like that. They played at night. Red Hot Chili Peppers, and they'd play in the middle of the night, and I would take my tape and I'd play it in case I fell asleep and missed something cool and new to me.
well, that was one of the things that MTV did right in this period as well. Was I've written articles about it for the Post. With the start of MTV Raps, where No Raps was on daily. It started with a different schedule, but then it became a daily show, and then you had Headbangers Ball was Saturday night.
Yep.
And 120 Minutes, which was the alternative show, was Sunday night. And a lot of this stuff was tape traded, especially in those days when MTV didn't have saturation to every cable system and stuff. You and I talked about this a different time, but one of my friends would tape 120 minutes, and then the tape would get passed around for people who didn't have MTV, and then like you'd have episodes taped over the previous episodes, where it was like it would go around, and not everybody had it, but it was a way that the music circulated. But you had these avenues and openings. So even if your local radio stations are just like, I've got a pop station, a country station, a classic rock station, you could go to MTV and be like, oh, I'm not hearing this on my radio, but I'm hearing this here. I'm not hearing this music here. I can hear it on the college station, but MTV's actually playing it on Sunday night.
Right.
And it really, it did expand what people were listening to. It was the fact that if you look at those shows when they started, and then you look at when SoundScan came in, MTV prepared a lot of kids for those albums.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people, like there's a lot of musicians, so a lot of musicians were active then. They really want to downplay the impact of MTV. And I think they're wrong. It's like, because the bands that really blew up and everything were the bands that were MTV supported.
Yeah.
MTV did not, there's bands that played for a long time and maintained their genre, and they've been very prevalent and influential, but like MTV didn't play Agent Orange, so Agent Orange wasn't selling 2 million records. MTV was playing Urge Overkill, so Urge Overkill was selling 2 million records.
And I'm sure between you and I, there was a more than a record or two that we got pushed over into buying because a video was awesome, and we were like, I'll pick that up.
Or I think too, one of the things that probably had an impact on me is that there was a lot of bands I read about that I didn't have a context for hearing, that I wasn't going to just go out and buy the album. And then I saw the video and I'm like, okay, now I get it. I'll check that out. Like Afghan Wigs, for example, or, be a good example of that. Or Red Cross, or, definitely groups that I'd read about and then I saw, and I'm like, oh, I can contextualize this now. And like, now that seems like something I'll invest, like buying a whole CD in, because I did regularly. In my best friend Sean, he would buy, cheap tapes at Headstone Music and Terre Haute. Plug, they still exist, but $1, $2 tapes is a different thing in the used bins. And my first Soul Asylum record I got out of a cutout bin, which is and the horse they rode in on. Yeah.
Foreshadowing. Cool. Yeah. I did get a kick out of after the Sleazy E with the will work for food sign. We have the disclaimer on there, which I'm going to call the disclaimer. because it's hilarious. It's like, oh, none
Very
of the
nice.
people in here were named or like real people, and it's hilarious. Like I feel like that was an MTV edition, not a
Yeah,
Dr. Dre edition,
please don't sue us.
right?
But
People in the video and the song are fictional. Any likeness to real? Like, yeah, come on, Sleazy E, Jesus.
well, I don't know about Tim Dog who you mentioned, but like on the arc of the universe, um, we know that Dre reconciled with Easy before he died,
Right.
and we know
They
that
all did, right? Because I mean, he
yeah,
was kind of the one that they were all like, "Screw that guy." So
yeah, and Dre and Cube were cool by the time that Let It Ride came out
yeah, just
on
a
the
couple
same
of months
album,
later, yeah.
because Cube is in that video, and so
Mm-hmm.
whatever was going on, they put that to bed. So as a document of that, it's kind of like antiquated in a way,
Mm-hmm.
but I mean, it is what it is. It exists, but it probably is best as a document of look at what Snoop was going to be.
Right. Yeah, and Dre's humble. He's no. I mean, this album feels like, yeah, you said the introduction and launching pad for Snoop. Because yeah, that's what I mean. Dre, I think relishes more in producer role than he does being an artist.
Yeah, and I think that as far as Dre Day goes, I mean, there are better Dre songs,
Oh yeah,
but it's just this hit in a way and in a time where it's like the iron was hot and Snoop is new and it doesn't sound like other stuff on the radio,
oh yeah, sure.
and it's a very strong delineation of that West Coast sound that Dre is hugely influential in putting down.
Yeah, and because it's got attitude, it's harsh, and you know feels angry. Like
Yeah.
he's not talking to all of us. He's talking to these specific people. But it did. I feel this is kind of like where you're like, oh, rap it. White people being like, rap is scary because it's got that attitude.
It's funny you mentioned that because there's a Time magazine cover which I believe had Eddie Vedder on it, if I
Mhm.
remember right. But it was the headline was All the Rage, and
Ah,
they had a story about how angry pop music was at the time, and they talked about like the Seattle bands and hip hop and like Metallica's Black Album and everything. It was the context of that, which is not wrong. I mean, this
right.
is there's substantial anger and angst in a lot of those.
I mean, after years and years
Uh,
of having to deal with America in the Gulf War of 19. Oh wait, no.
well, yeah, I think that's I think that there's probably a fair case to be made for that. That like Dave Grohl's talked a lot about the Rock Against Reagan show that he was at as a kid.
Oh wow.
That the punk bands played in D.C. and everything, and as Dead Kennedys and everybody, and Ted Kennedy, Jello Biafra's pointed at the Washington Monument, it has those two red warning lights, and he's like, "Look at the towering Klansman with his two red eyes," and
Oh
and like
jeez.
the cops were coming in and everything, but Reagan era and Reagan and Bush gave a lot of people reason to write protest music, and a lot of it wasn't
Yeah.
just like our
Yeah.
town is shitty. You know, a lot of the stuff that's coming out of there, like hell, man, 1991, Jeremy is a song about school shooting.
Yeah.
You know, the stuff that they're singing about
Yeah.
is relevant. Rooster by Alice in Chains is a song about post traumatic stress disorder.
Hmm.
About Lane Staley's dad in Vietnam. They're singing about real shit, and the stuff that Dre and everybody were rapping about. There's a lot of like sensationalized stuff, but there's
Uh-huh.
also a lot of very, this is shit that happens,
Yeah.
and so it was anger in a lot of cases.
I
It
agree.
was, and it was the for a song from the same period, just a couple years before, "Rockin' in the Free World" by Neil Young, a
Oh yeah.
widely misinterpreted song, but it's
Born in
about
the USA. Just
yeah,
yeah.
stuff is shitty, and particularly when he talks about the kid, he's like this one more kid that'll never go to school, never get to grow up, never get to be cool. He's the kids he's talking about are the guys that are making the music.
Right.
that's coming right after him. It's like that the lost opportunity. There's, hey, I think we got screwed here. I think that's a lot of the anger, and they experienced it different ways.
Right.
But there's a common well of where a lot of that stuff is coming from.
Yeah. And they don't end up in these nice, clean little sing-along arena sing-along choruses either. That's the thing. They stay harsh in the chorus.
Yeah. It's and I there's a lot of good young bands, but the they're not necessarily angry.
Right. Yeah.
That's not to say that they don't have a lot of anger. Like very recently we've discovered, maybe people knew about it before, but like I didn't know that Matt Healy from the 1975 was such an asshole.
Ah.
until recently, with all this talk about stuff he said on podcasts has come out and everything. It's like, okay, that's not I'm angry and I put it into my music. That's you're a dick. But
well, we had Lars, wasn't he kind of a dick? Or at least he talked like he was one.
Oh yeah, no. I think a lot of people thought that Lars was a douchebag.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's kind of interesting to see like where it's come to the fact that, and I'm not gonna I think cuddly is the wrong word, but where Dre and Snoop have become such like, I don't want to say grandfatherly either, but they're like they're seen as like benign old dudes to the point where Dre got to program the Super Bowl halftime show. It was Mary J. Blige's side, who has always been just a stellar R&B talent. And Kendrick, who came up in a very different era for hip hop. Dre, Snoop, Eminem, and 50 have had a shitload of controversy around.
Yes, they have. Yeah,
and it's like, but they get to do the halftime show. And it's a very, very weird thing. It boggles my mind that those dudes did the halftime show and the Foo Fighters have not yet.
Right? Yeah, it's crazy.
You'd think that they would be a natural call, but I think it's interesting and a lot of the nostalgia that our age group has for that stuff is sometimes tempered any hard questions that we might ask about.
Right. And a lot, I'd say there's many of us in the like the Caucasian crowd that they like it now, but back then they were probably, I don't know if they did. Like it's got nostalgia factor now with it.
Yeah, it wore them down.
Yeah, wore them down.
But I hazard a guess to say that there are quite a few people who probably listen to that do not take the time to listen to new Kendrick or new Run the Jewels or whatnot.
For sure.
When it drops, they'll wait until the song is like really huge to acknowledge its existence.
Of course, yep. It's not on the radio. Oh, now it's on the radio. I like it. It was on your album the whole time, man. You bought it. Yeah. I skipped to the singles. Yeah. But yeah, that'll do it for this one, Troy. You'll be back here in a few weeks. So till then, what do you got going on and where can people find you at?
You can find me at Saturday Evening Post, SaturdayEveningPost.com. And basically I'm also writing comic book series for Tidal Wave. It's getting ready to come out soon. So keep an eye out for that. The Legend of Isis book about the mythological character as a superhero, not the terrorist organization. But Legend of Isis has been around for a couple of decades now, and so I'm writing a new miniseries for that'll be out soon, and some other projects like that coming up. So, but you can follow me at Troy Brownfield on Twitter, and also Troy Brownfield on Facebook. So just see what you can find.
Oh, excellent. All right. I'm on Twitter and Instagram at Brandon4KUHD, written work at whysoblue.com. Come back Monday. Scott, Aaron, and I are talking In the Line of Fire, Weekend at Bernie's 2, Rookie of the Year, as the summer of 93 at 30 continues.
It's the summer of 93 at 30.
Thank you for listening. The Brandon Peters Show is a Creative Zombie Studios production. Produced by Brad Shoemaker and Brandon Peters. Written and edited by Brandon Peters. Announcer vocals by Jessica Alsman. Theme song by Metavari. Web design and show art by Brad Shoemaker with Brandon Peters. All music and clips featured in the episode are property of their respective studios, and no infringement is intended. The Summer of and News themes by Pres Maxson. Additional information on this and other episodes at thebrandonpetershow.com. For any inquiries, press opportunities, or sponsorship, contact mail at thebrandonpetershow.com. The show is available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or anywhere podcasts are found.